Hello everyone, I'm here with my friend Tina, and Tina and I have been running retreats, and we're having a cup of tea as we chat. And we've been running retreats at Lendrick Lodge for about 5, 6 years. And we're currently with a beautiful group who've just had lunch and been in the water, even though it's freezing outside, but they're very brave. So Tina is one of the foremost mindfulness teachers in Scotland. What is mindfulness, Tina? You need to hold the microphone right up.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Mindfulness is a skill that we can all learn to train ourselves to be more present in life. So instead of being distracted, for some people 99% of the time, and that means just living in their thoughts and stories and images and commentary in the mind, it's about actually being more present for life and experiences in life. And also when we are distracted, and even as a practitioner, I get distracted, of course I do. It's noticing when you're lost in thinking and using the skills of mindfulness training to come back to the present moment.
Yeah. Sometimes when I'm talking to the guys in the rehabs, I'm a bit like, I'm trying to find analogies that might help people, and actually I was talking about, Mohanji talked quite often about being in a river of your thoughts, and the practice allows us to come out of the river and watch our thoughts rather than being like submerged in our thoughts. And I was explaining this to the guys once, and one of the guys went, yeah, Mark, it's a bit like being in a washing machine getting tumbled around. I mean, and that's actually a really good analogy because, if you can imagine being in a washing machine, but you can also picture being outside the washing machine, which is where we are, and watching the tumbling of your thoughts. And if we get the chance to watch our thoughts, or even just hear our thoughts, and then notice that that's what we're doing most of the time, and that they're not actually real.
Well, your thoughts are real. They're happening in this moment, but they might not be true.
They're not true. Yeah, they're real thoughts, but they're not. They're not true.
And the definition of mindfulness from Rob Nairn, who is the founder of the Mindfulness Association, would say it's knowing what's happening while it's happening without preference. So we're working with whatever's arising in our minds, whether we label it as positive, negative, or neutral. We're working skillfully with what's here. And as you were talking about that metaphor of the river, Rob Nairn also uses that metaphor, and he combines it with what he calls the undercurrent and observer. So there are times when we're lost in thoughts and stories and images, which is a lot of our life, and we're then in that river, and he calls that the undercurrent. And the moment we become awake and aware, we are sitting on the bank observing the flow of activity, and that's the observer part of you. So there are times, it's a bit like when you're at the cinema, to use another metaphor.
I've heard that.
You're watching a James Bond movie or whatever movie, and all of a sudden you're in that movie. You're in the action. And then someone opens some popcorn behind you and you realise you're not in that movie, you're sitting in a cinema. And you're suddenly aware of everything around you. And so in mindfulness, we're cultivating this ability to be present using our senses. So we're opening much more to our senses and aware of what's around us with sight, smell, taste, touch. So we're really cultivating that ability to deepen that awareness and be present for things more using senses, but also coming into our body much more. What's happening in my body in this moment? Am I relaxed sitting here with you? Am I tense? Am I breathing? We come back to the breath really often when we notice we're distracted, lost in thinking. Let me just come home to my body. Let me just check in, is my breath flowing easily?
Yeah.
So we cultivate lots of different skills and methods to come back to this present moment. So the more I practice, the more I can catch myself lost in thinking and in story and come back to actually, what can I see right now? What can I hear in this moment? What can I smell? What's going on inside my body right now? So it's that continual coming back and waking up to the aliveness of this moment.
Yeah. I think the word that comes to mind is being connected, you know, rather than disconnected. And I'm pretty fortunate, obviously, like my job is to be connected and to do practices which involve that and encourage other people to do those practices. I mean, there's a time of year where I have to do my tax return and I'm sitting at a desk for hours and hours and hours. And I realise I'm so disconnected from my body because when I go to move after like looking at figures and trying to collate figures, I'm like, oh my God, my body is so uncomfortable and that's been probably screaming at me to move. But because I've been so involved in this task of trying to do my tax return, that when I do move, I realise, oh, I should have done this an hour ago or longer, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm very much the same in terms of if I get to my desk at work and I'm busy in my head with stuff, working away, you know, it's that pausing to have a break and connect, or when you arrive, just to sit and be for a moment and have reminders around you if you're new to it to reconnect to your body, reconnect to your breath, get up and have a walk around. So you need reminders early on to come back to presence. And the more I practice, the more awake I just naturally become. So you haven't got to do anything other than learn the skills of how to come back to this moment when we're lost in thinking. And, you know, for a lot of people, they're lost in thinking 90 to 99% of the time. And that the old me used to be that way. And the mind often defaults to the negative. So if you think you're lost in your mind 90 to 99% of the time, and that is negative thinking, that's a challenging place to be. So we're working on noticing our defaults and not pushing any of that away, but working skillfully to create new neural pathways in the mind.
Yeah, and obviously we have like a formal practice, you know, where we sit, and I know that the Mindfulness Association has 2 sits a day, 10:30 and 7 p.m.
Yeah.
And I'll put a link to that in the notes. But also there's kind of like an informal, just general awareness, right? That we have of what we're doing while we're doing it. You know?
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know, rather than, you know, it always has to be sitting in a meditation cushion where we're deliberately trying to really be aware and be conscious, but just in general, you know, like even things like when we spoke about this last night to the group, you know, like, you know, when you're having a shower, have a shower, you know, like feel the water, feel the connection of the water on your skin, feel the movement that you're creating to cleanse your body. And same with food, you know, like I love doing an eating meditation with a group. And there's something about an eating meditation, even if it's with like a couple of sultanas. Like you feel like satiated at the end of it, you know? You're like, oh, I love that sultana, but I don't think I could manage another one, you know? Like, so it's very funny because normally, like if I'm sitting watching a movie and I'm just like with a box of chocolates, like here's another one, and you're just so oblivious to the fact you've eaten a box of chocolates, you know?
Yeah, it's slowing it all down. And it's doing everything with full awareness. So if you multitask, that's the furthest removed from mindfulness.
Yeah.
Mindfulness is doing one thing at a time and doing it with full awareness.
Yeah.
John Kabat-Zinn's definition is paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, non-judgmentally. So we're learning to do that in everything we do. So the formal practice is sitting here for 10, 20, 30, 45 minutes a session, formally. And then, as you say, bringing it into your everyday life in different ways. like brushing your teeth mindfully, cooking mindfully, walking mindfully. Wonderful to walk mindfully and in nature, and just really experience what's around you. So now, as a practitioner of many, many years, I lead a mindful life rather than I've done my mindfulness practice today, tick.
Yeah.
It's actually now I want to lead much more of a mindful life, that more and more I'm awake and aware of what's going on, rather than, I've sat for 20 minutes today and it's done.
Yeah. It's a bit like, it's not like like it's your workout, it's like, I've done my workout for the day, I can forget about it now, but in terms of like actually, even with working out or running or going to the gym or something like that, it's still important. You can't spend the next 8 hours sitting on a desk, not moving, your body still requires more movement throughout that, I quite often say to students, movement is a form of nutrition, and like nutrition, you need it from lots of sources, and you need to have a wide variety of movement, and when we're kids we have that wide variety, but as adults, if we're not careful, it becomes sitting and then walking to our next seat.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you became really inspired to pursue mindfulness when I think we were at the same weekend, our same visit from John Kabat-Zinn in Scotland, right? And that was life-changing, right?
It was life-changing, yeah. He's amazing. He's really inspirational.
Yeah,
he set up the 8-week program in mindfulness that I've run hundreds of times, and he's just rolled it out to the world. And it's 8 weeks can create a massive transformation in somebody's life. But it was the second afternoon where he said, nothing will change in your life unless you create the space for it. And for me, that was a light bulb moment that I needed. I was still working full time as an oncology ward sister. And, I'd done the training in mindfulness, training in compassion, training in insight and wisdom, wanted to take that out to the world because it had benefited me so much. And that was just key for me. I needed to create space to be able to then take this out into the world. So, I went in and handed my notice in the next, I can't remember if it was the next day or the next week, but it was pretty soon after I met John Kabat-Zinn.
Yeah.
And that changed my life. I created lots of space, and then things came to me around mindfulness that I could never have imagined. And I've been teaching mindfulness for 14 years now, to specialist groups, to business, to companies, to the general public, lots of organisations, and seen massive transformation in people. And as short as 10 minutes a day to begin with, you're noticing changes already.
Yeah.
So the benefits in regular practice.
Yeah, I remember hearing John Kabat-Zinn talking once, and he said, people can fall in love with meditation, and they talk about it, and he's like, stop talking about it, just practice it, right?
Yeah.
Just like, every time you want to talk about meditation and how amazing it is, you should really go practice it instead. So why don't you do, like, if you don't mind, Tina, like just a 2 or 3 minute practice for us?
Yeah, of course.
Just like, I know, like when we do these weekends together, you do these short practices just to land and let people connect. And that would be really great.
Yeah, no, I'd be
we'll
delighted.
Finish with that.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay. So why don't we just begin by finding a posture that feels aligned, alert, upright, or if you're lying down, supported. And maybe we could just begin by setting in an intention to be present and alert. And maybe also just connect to a motivation of why this is important, why is it beneficial. And perhaps that might be that we can become the best version of ourselves. Maybe just to be more awake in life. And then finding the breath flowing in the body. Noticing the in-breath, noticing the out-breath. Tuning into the rhythm, the flow. And maybe we could invite the breath to lengthen just a little. Slowing down the in-breath, slowing down the out-breath. And if we notice the mind has wandered, just being curious, what is arising within the mind? That simple noticing. Nothing wrong. This is a strong habit within the mind. But that moment we notice is a mindful moment. And we have the choice then to come back to the next in-breath and out-breath. And what helps us to stay focused on the breath might be just to count the breath in for 3 or 4 and out for the same. Or a simple phrase. I am breathing in. I am breathing out. And as we tune into the breath, we can also feel the movement in the body. Breathing in, I know I am breathing in. Breathing out, I know I am breathing out. Letting go of regulating the breath, feeling the natural rhythm once again, and fully checking in with the body. Feeling the ground beneath and the support. Taking just a moment to check in with body sensation. Any tightness, contraction. That moment we notice, we can let it go, it can ease. And if we find we're thinking about the body or we're distracted once again, just simply noticing, letting go, coming back home to the body, reconnecting, noticing what's here right now. And allowing this moment to be just as it is. Nothing to push away. Opening moment by moment, breath by breath, to our unfolding experience. And then gently opening the eyes and coming back into the space of what's all around us.
Thank you, Tina.
Absolute pleasure.
Thank you, everybody. Hopefully that's helpful. I'll put a link to Tina's website on the notes, and yeah, hopefully that's useful. Little intro 101 to mindfulness and another little chat for us all. See you soon.